Bridget from First National Real Estate. We're New Zealand's #1 First National office for 15 consecutive years. Thank you very much for inviting me along, Nina and Brian as well, and it's lovely to see Stuart Smith here too today. And a couple of people who work in the industries that I'm going to talk about. So we've got Jackie and Bex, who obviously know real estate, and Nikki from NZME and radio. So if none of what I say is true, please don't tell me.
Do you want to pay us in chocolate?
I'll pay you in notepads, that's even better.
No deal.
I'll sort you out. So who's heard of Zig Ziglar, the sales guru? Yeah, we can't have a sales presentation without a quote from Zig Ziglar. And he said, "I've always said that everyone is in sales. Maybe you don't hold the title of salesperson, but if the business you are in requires you to deal with people, you, my friend, are in sales." So I love sales. I love the sales process. And I really want people who own businesses, who work in businesses, to have more confidence in their sales ability and to place more importance on the role of sales in their business. So today I'm looking forward to speaking with you about my sales journey, from a person who never thought they would or could be in sales, to now becoming a salesperson who performs in the top percentiles of two highly competitive industries, and that's radio sales and real estate. I'll share some stories with you along the way about my journey, and lastly I'll give you 6 key questions that your potential customers will be asking themselves when they are looking at doing business with you. And I hope that my presentation today will help inspire or even re-inspire you to approach sales with more confidence and help you secure more business. So I was talking to a business friend over the weekend, and he mentioned he'd seen the Biz Break email, and we talked a little bit about me doing this presentation, and so I seized the opportunity, because to be honest I was kind of struggling about what I might say, and I said, well, what would you like to hear about from me in this presentation? What would you like to know more about sales? And he said to me, well, what I'd like to know, Bridget, is how to introduce myself to new customers without appearing too salesy. And that got me thinking, not just about the answer to his question, but about what appearing too salesy is. I mean, what is appearing too salesy? Why are so many of us concerned about appearing like a salesperson? Is it because of what we perceive a salesperson to be? And maybe at the moment some of you are channeling some of those images from $1 Million Listings, Beverly Hills, with the slick back guy and, you know, smarmy answer for everything. Well, I propose that we amend our idea of what a salesperson is. I propose that we think about a person this high. Cute, demanding. Yes, I'm talking about toddlers. They are some of the best salespeople you'll ever see around, and they are the best negotiators too. They're ruthless. But the fact of the matter is that we all sell. We all have to convince people from time to time of our point of view. Be a toddler, a teenager, a husband convincing a wife, or a wife convincing a husband. We all sell. In fact, we even sell to ourselves. I never thought that I'd end up in sales, but then how often does our life journey become the same as the one we thought we'd be on when we were 14? I wanted to be in radio, so I went to the New Zealand Broadcasting School and thought I'd be an announcer. Turns out, I was dreadful at it. And to be fair, being a radio announcer wasn't actually that much fun, sitting in a booth, just pushing a button on a computer and talking every now and then. Wasn't that much fun. But I discovered writing ads. Now that excited me, and I became quite good at it. There is such a skill in communicating a message in a creative way in 30 seconds. You learn to say a lot with very little. So my first job, fresh out of broadcasting school, was an intern scholarship to Great Northern Creative, based in Auckland. Great Northern Creative were the group of writers writing for the radio network, they were called at that stage, now NZME. And I was part of a group of 20 writers, and we were writing for clients from Rotorua to Whangarei. In fact, I was there when that Show Us Your Crack jingle was created. You know, Show Us Your Crack? Oh, Novus? Little known fact, I'm the first Novis. In fact, when I went overseas and came back, they'd moved that Novis show as you crack ad to TV, and it was so weird watching TV and seeing someone else's face saying "Oh Novis" with my voice. They dubbed me over, or faced me over. So this was the early 2000s, and in New Zealand radio, the marketing concept of a USP was just starting to take hold. USP being unique selling point. The idea that a business needs to have a unique point of difference to its competitors and to market the benefit of that difference to its customers. It's a reasonably well-known fundamental of advertising now, but it's worth, I think, applying to your businesses, to your service. What is your unique selling point? What do you do that none of your competitors can claim? And what is its benefit to your customer? If you can put your competitor's name in a commercial and it still rings true, your advertising isn't being as effective as possible. And I continue to use this USP, unique selling point fundamental, when listing property, and I certainly apply this formula to the houses that I market. What makes this house different to the others, and what is its benefit? So after almost 2 years riding in Auckland, I went and did my OE, and eventually I came back to Blenheim to spend the summer with Mum and Dad and then move back to Auckland. Or so I thought. Life turned out quite different. I never left. I got a part-time role announcing on Saturday afternoons at Sounds FM, as it was back in the day. I was dreadful, but it got me in the door to be offered a role as the promotions and events coordinator, and I met some of you for the first time during that role. My first day on the job was I had to drive the breakfast announcer at that time, Nigel Steele, some of you might remember him, around the streets at 7 AM while he was dressed up as the Easter Bunny. That was my first day. It was great. Part of that role, I organised on-air competitions and events like the Midwinter Swim and the Beach Dig, and I also spent a good deal of time behind the barbecue at Brownie's Mattress Direct. I can now barbecue sausages and onions en masse. That is not a skill to be underestimated. I also learned how to work weekends and early mornings and 7 days a week, which is kind of useful now. Then after about 2 years in that role, my boss called me aside and said, "I'm going to give you a list of clients." And my journey as a salesperson began. I'd crossed over to the dark side, if you will. Now, what I thought a great salesperson was then, and what I think a great salesperson is now, are two quite different concepts. Back then, I thought a great salesperson was a person who had all the great answers. Now I know that a great salesperson is actually a person who has all the great questions. Think about that. When I began in radio, our job was selling short-term packs. You know, we've got 30 ads for $200, we'll give you a free ham, how many do you want? So I'd go off traipsing around the local businesses touting these short-term packs. Newspapers was still a dominant force back in those days, and they got the majority of the ad spend and the annual commitments. And sometimes, usually once every couple of months, to make the last bit of budget for the month, the sales team would be confined to the office and tethered to the phone for what we imaginatively called phone sales days. Now, phone sales days were always an interesting time. I say that in inverted commas. You went crazy by the end of it. You were locked up for 8 hours, cold calling prospects and selling reduced airtime packs. You'd get rewards for selling these packs, and the success of those days was all about trying to keep your energy up, the hype up, and just keeping going. And yes, a big wine at the end of it all. One day, I discovered a way to beat the inevitable fatigue and that reluctance to make calls, and that was to team up with my trusty colleague Laurel, who some of you may know, and play this game where only one of us could be on the phone at once. So she'd make a call, and I was not allowed to dial my next prospect until she had completed her call and the receiver was hung up in the cradle, and vice versa. I tell you what, that was reverse psychology at its finest. Because I couldn't call until she'd finished, I couldn't wait to get on the phone, when normally phone sales days were just a day of me making as many trips as I could to the loo before the boss cottoned on to me. When it was just me, I found another way to egg myself on to make those calls, and I used, yes, an egg timer. So after I'd finished making a call and hung up the phone, I'd flip the egg timer over, and by the time it had run out, I had to get back on the phone. So for those of you who are in a job where you're making calls and sometimes you don't want to, a couple of tricks to perhaps help you on your way. When MediaWorks bought Sounds FM, we started doing annual selling seminars where we would invite around, 30 businesses into a room and pitch them an annual advertising solution. That was a wonderful experience, as I got to understand who was making strong buying signals, who was hot to buy, and who wasn't fairly quickly. And that's been a great skill to have in real estate. Also, I was selling during the global financial crisis, and that was a really interesting time to sell advertising, as it did hit local businesses really hard. I'm sure you may have experienced that yourself. And many saw advertising as an expendable product to get rid of when they needed to free up cash. But markets change all the time, and the flexibility to know how to sell in an up market and sell in a down market is a skill I learned then. We also around that time had a competitor drop their ad rates to $1 a radio commercial when we were selling ours for around $10 a commercial. So again, learning that skill to hold your price has been very effective to learn. As the radio industry developed and the direction changed from selling short-term packs, we became more advertising advisors. We spent a lot more time asking questions, identifying the problems and opportunities within our clients' businesses and developing advertising solutions for them. And that's the part that I love most about selling radio, and it's the same for real estate. I love the opportunity to sit alongside business owners and now homeowners at the very start and ask them the questions, identify problems and the opportunities, and use my skill to develop their campaign strategy and get the results that ultimately make their lives better. I mean, that's what we're all about. After a decade selling radio, I decided I'd gone as far as I wanted to in radio, and I needed a new challenge. So I pulled aside a real estate client of mine, and she introduced me to Mark Stevenson and Owen Norrish, the then principals of First National Marlborough Real Estate. I studied my real estate qualification and got my licence in November 2016. And yes, there are several differences between selling airtime, and selling bricks and mortars, and we're all self-employed, so that's been a really interesting aspect to learn how to work with and deal with. But I tell you what, I'm really grateful for the sales experience that I had in radio. It served me well. I really enjoy running my own business. I do have a radio ad, yes. I've got my name on a few awards, and I've expanded to bring in an admin assistant onto my team, and that's Darren filming me there in the back. And recently I've brought on a sales executive, Carolyn, to my team to help expand my reach with buyers and owners. So sales has really been a wonderful career for me, and we are all sales people at some point. Like Zig Ziglar said, if you're in a business that deals with people, you, my friend, are a salesperson. So lastly, I'd like to leave you with 6 questions that potential customers are asking themselves when considering engaging you in your service. And they are up there on the screen, but I will go through them for those of you who may not be able to see them. So your potential customer may not spend an equal time answering each point or each question, and they may have already answered some of those questions either researching online or talking to friends, but they are asking themselves these 6 things. Number 1, do I trust the salesperson and their company? What can the salesperson do for me that I can't do for myself? Does the offering, does this deal make sense? Do I want it? Do I want it now? And lastly, how do I obtain it? Answer those questions and the sale will conclude successfully. Conversely, if you find that you aren't winning the sales, take a look back at your discussion with your prospective customer, and you might be able to find which of those questions you haven't answered enough. That's me. Thank you very much for your time.